is the final reflection for reading and writing remediation, Edel 508. Identify one aspect of the interpretation and strategy selection process that stands out for you as being transactional. So for this, I returned to Rosenblatt, the theory of transactional theory of reading and writing, because that's really the underpinning of the whole process. There are quite a few parts of the informal reading inventory interpretations and strategy selection processes that stand out as being transactional. I mean, the whole thing, really, it's all reciprocal. It's all a reader engaging with the text, making meaning and finding meaning, as well as a teacher engaging with the reader's engagement, making meaning and defining what kind of a reader and what kind of strategies would work best for this learner. A few specific parts: the free recall idea of the passage reading comprehension I found very transactional, in that you weren't asking specific questions to find comprehension. It's not like the classic multiple choice questions or even classic open-ended questions. You start with a free recall, which is a much more open transactional, in the sense that the reader's engaging with the text in their own way. And then as the tester, as the teacher, recognizing the balance between text-driven answers and inferences and elaborations, and recognizing that both text-based answers and background knowledge answers are important, and that we're looking for a reader that has both, I think is really transactional, right? Anything to me that is recognizing a balance and trying to find a properly balanced reader, rather than someone who just gets all the answers right from the reading, is very transactional. This isn't to say that the batter doesn't have specific questions, but the simple fact of a free recall and then asking your questions allows for a transactional interpretation. The analysis of that comprehension I found also very transactional. At first I was a little frustrated that there weren't as specific indicators of what a strong recall or what a weak recall may be. We had loose indicators like 5 to 10 events during a free recall would be an appropriate amount, or 25 to 30% of the pieces of the piece. But they're very loose. I was used to the F&P system, which is also a rubric and is also transactional, but was a little more defined. And I think that the ill-defined nature of it allows a engaged teacher to be transactional. So yeah, the free recalls, the balance between text-driven and background knowledge-driven answers. The biggest thing is just the total context. I found this in Rosenblatt, page 12. Teachers and pupils in the classroom are transacting with one another and the social environment. Their context broadens to include the whole institutional, social, and cultural environment. This kind of like it's everything answer is really what I'm trying to describe. This process of interpretation and choosing strategies, you're taking into account the words and isolations, the passage reading, the spelling, the writing, and as an individual teacher, if I'm assessing my own students, I'm taking into account their day-to-day, our conversations, every single thing that we've done, and triangulating all of the data and transacting, engaging with it daily, consistently, and I think that's kind of the big thing, is it all matters. The interpretations themselves, I think that process was very transactional. The question and answer process of interpretations was maybe the part of the process that I found the most transactional. So going from words in isolation to your passages with your writing, and going through all of the questions and engaging with the data as a professional was a reciprocal relationship. And I think that if I was using this process, then when sharing the information with parents and students, I would also like it to be a reciprocal conversation, a working document, an open reciprocal conversation, because the strategies and the understanding of the reader is dynamic, it's fluid, it's always developing, and that's the key. I also found that the interpretation process focused much more on describing the learner than evaluating the learner, and I appreciated that as being transactional. There's some evaluative pieces, right? Dora is a grade 3.0 independent reader for words in isolation, and I think that has a lot of value to kind of narrow the scope and give some practical advice for what kind of books you should be reading, or what kind of words and things, word work you should be doing, and those kind of pieces. But I found that the majority of the interpretation was describing the specific type of reader in order, and reader and writer, learner, in order to then find strategies to best develop that reader. And so with Dora, we found that she was text-based, and so a lot of the strategy is text-based and low integration. She didn't bring her background knowledge in. She didn't make connections. So then the strategies that we're trying to bring in are ones that develop those habits of mind. And I think that's really effective. So yeah, I think I made this too long, so I'm sorry, but thank you for watching. It's a very engaging process. And there's many examples of the interpretation and strategy selection process being transactional, specifically the free recalls, the balance between text-driven and background knowledge-driven information, the total context of the experience, and the interpretation process being more descriptive than evaluative, and the question and answer interpretation process being very transactional. Have a great holiday.